I'd like to call this suspend the procedural bylaw. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? John Manson is moving, Bill Morgan is seconding. All in favor?
All right.
Okay. Second item on the agenda is the written disclosures of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest. Are there any disclosures? None?
None.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda as presented. I need a mover and a seconder, please. John Manson and Bill Morton. Any questions about the agenda? None? Okay, all in favor? And that motion is carried. Okay, we're just changing the order of one thing in the agenda. We have Antoine Boucher here. He's the municipal engineer, correct?
That's right.
And as a report to present for us, it was 9.3.
9.1.1.
9.1.1, yes, I have it here. And he's presenting the bridge management study. And Antoine, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, good evening, member of council and staff. Thank you for having me today. So generally speaking, I put a little bit of a summary, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about the biennial or biennial bridge studies that the municipality is mandated to do. So what happens is we've identified certain bridges within the municipality, and we always categorize bridges and culverts. So in the regulation, there's a regulation that mandates that we have to do every second year a structural inspection that is based on the OSIM. OSIM is the Ontario Structure Inspection. So it establishes guidelines that we follow, and those guidelines kind of, are getting all the components of the structure. What happens with the Township of Calvin is that we have 6 bridges. So the structures within the municipality is included those 6. There's actually no culverts, large culverts, structural. And the definition of a structural culvert is anything that's larger than 3 meters in diameter. So you've got many culverts, but they're smaller in diameter. So therefore, they're not part of the bridge structural inspections. So in this case, what happens is we're really talking about those 5 structures. Every 2 years, we come back and we do a reevaluation of them. And essentially, we're following Regulation 107. And if you read more specifically the section 2, subsection 3, structural integrity, safety, and condition of every bridge shall be determined through performance of at least one inspection. Ontario Structure Inspection Manual. So that's the regulation that we follow when we do so. The general outcome or findings from what we have is that we categorize what we call a BCI. So BCI is a Bridge Condition Index. Essentially, it's like a scorecard, from school, if you think of it that way. So 100% is excellent. And there's a passing grade that when you're below 60, it's become questionable. So essentially, when we have a 70 to 100 range, the BCI calls it a good bridge. A 60 to 70 is called a fair structure. And then below 60, it's called a poor structure. So as we speak right now, the majority of the structures within the municipality is, we have 5 of them that range between 70 and 100. So that's the good news. The average of those 5 have a BCI of 83.3. This number will eventually, with time, slowly deteriorate as the structure ages. but it's a guide. So this is based on the 2022. Eventually, there's one structure that rated big. So that's just to give you a quick overview. If there's any question, perhaps I can keep it open. Don't hesitate to interrupt me or ask, and I'll gladly answer them as we go.
I have a quick question. The Stewart's Bridge, timber girder bridge is the one that's 68% or 68 PCI. But then you have in another column, 2024, 86.5. What does that refer to?
Okay, I'm just gonna try to follow. Which column are we talking about?
If you look at the Stewart's Bridge,
Oh, okay, sorry, okay. So,
it shows 68, but then for 2024, it shows that it moves up to 86.5.
okay, so the column, the reference column that you're talking about, are basically cut and paste sections from the report.
Okay,
With the report, we've been working with HP Engineering, and every second years, the full grid inspection report, that's right. And what happens is that we kind of elevated the report to do a bit more than what the report is. We wanted to turn that report into, everybody knows or heard about what we call asset management.
Mhm.
So really, essentially what we did is we took the report, we said, okay, we would like to do a 10-year capital plan on what needs to be spent and where. So every time we do the review, we establish that if there's any funds or any monies to be spent, let's establish a next 10-year plan, and that becomes the asset management. So those figures you're referring to, really what they are kind of in thousands of dollars. They're in thousands of dollars for the year 2023, 2024, and then I didn't continue because right now, like as the municipality is in good condition with the other structures, there's no other needs for future years. But it does establish that for those two structures specifically, it talks about work that, you know, would have to be done, and it kind of identifies which ones. So I'll talk about that because on the second page, we kind of touch on that a bit more in detail. But this is essentially what those numbers mean. So the BCI, you are correct. When we refer to, well, Hackenborg was reconstructed, so it's a recently new bridge. The Wally structure is actually in really good condition. We did some work on the guide rails lately. And then you've got the Crothers bridge as well that had some structure work done to the guide rails, I believe. Now, when we refer back to the Stewart's Bridge, that one's identified for from some study and some work. Patois Bridge actually is relatively rebuilt not that many years ago as well. So still with good conditions and no need to do any evaluation as we speak. And as we go down to the last structure identified, the Crosses Bridge, also kind of related to safety. So essentially, the outcome of the study hasn't really red flagged anything major for the structures themselves, but in the current use. So that's very important. We have to understand that the evaluation is always based on the current use. So when we look at the structures, we evaluate if there's any restrictions for weight limits, and if you know, what is the kind of traffic, and also what is the speed on that posted road as well. So those factors could change. If they do, well, then the evaluation may be different, may vary. In that little kind of summary report that I distributed, we can see that for the B4 bridge, they're named B1 to B6. So the B4 bridge is actually the Stewart's Bridge. So what was identified for the current use and current condition of the bridge, with specifically the positioning of it, because you've got a section of road that is maintained by the municipality, and then there's another section that isn't. So the bridge becomes physically just past the turnaround location. So what was established for that structure would be to do engineering study for future rehabilitation and replacement, but not for the structure itself. It was really intended to be for a traffic study and then for the barrier study. Because the barrier study is the barrier that we have on the side, they're not in compliance. So in order to evaluate and then redesign those, that's what was identified for that structure. For the position where it's sitting and its condition, the barrier was identified as being sub. So there's a rehabilitation replacement study for the barrier itself. And there's a high level evaluation of costs. So to better understand an OSIM study, we have to kind of go back sometimes and step back because you know, those studies are not extremely expensive. So what happens is they're done on a high level. So what happens is we do measure typical width, typical length, and then we identify. So we have kind of guideline dollar values. So if a structure is a certain width and a certain length and the deck area is a certain area, it falls in a category of pricing. So we use that general pricing for that area, and that populates a cost per repair. So they're high level numbers. So we take them for just a sense of what needs to be done. In this case, traffic barrier is established as a dollar value need for the length of the structure of 21,500. So we have that number. And then the next thing is what we call approach barrier and treatment. The end treatment is what you see on the highway, which is basically the structure that takes the absorption shock. If you drive right into a guide rail end, it will slow you down and take the absorption. So in order to comply, they would need to have additional extended barriers and end treatments. So there's a bit of a loophole because here we're looking at it from the safety requirement based on the physical properties of the road. Is on those, they're highlighted. Whether or not we decide to do them this year or next year, there's certain reason and decision that we need to be taking. Like when we make a decision to do the work, there's priorities and sub decisions we do. But essentially, if we look at the structure and we say, okay, is this structure basically in good condition and compliance with the rules and regulations of what it should be, it flags those two issues right now. So that's why we have an $86,500 value established on what should be done. And really what should be done is simply the barrier and the approaches for the safety of that structure.
So question on its current use
That's right.
in compliance with the tonnage that can meet that bridges.
That's right, because what happens is there was and the report talks to that. There was a bridge capacity study, so structural analysis, quick structural analysis that established a certain capacity of tonnages. So when we look at the report, that is already provided. So there's that understanding that, okay, this structure is meant to carry a certain level, not meant, but is capable of carrying a certain amount of load. So therefore, based on that, do we do any other structural deficiencies? So in this case, they're not flagged. If it was to be, basically, there's another live load and dead load criteria. If it's in an open road, like for instance, if we look back at the Patois Bridge, for instance. So that one is under full load. So it has to be following certain guidelines for full heavy trucks and so forth. So when we had to do the design, the structure had to be built in a certain way. So this one that we're talking about is under present condition as a weight limit, a weight basically.
Do you know how much that is?
Well, in around 2012, or perhaps it was a little later, there was a study that was done. The capacity study back then had referred to about a 20-ton capacity. So when evaluating the structure, so if you think at the time, going back over 10 years ago, you know, if we were to revisit those numbers, they would likely be a little less. If I'm just going to pick a number without doing calculation, I could say it could be down slightly towards the 18 ton or so capacity. It's not like it reduced 50%, but it's somewhere in a range. It's probably not really truly a 20 ton exactly as we speak.
So 20 ton. If I'm corrected, right? Bill, what would be the weight of a fire truck that was fully loaded with water? It seemed.
Fully loaded, biggest truck, probably around 50,000 pounds.
Should be about 20 ton.
I can give you an example of a Traxel, because whenever we get Traxel, a Traxel truck will be able to, the payload. So the payload is what it carries. So the payload is, an average of 22 ton. So what it means is that if you're getting a truck of gravel that's fully loaded, it's carrying 22 tons. That's what's in
That's the truck itself.
And the weight of the truck is around the 15, 16 ton or so. So then combined, you're in excess, obviously, of that one.
So should we have a sign on that? I did a drive-by on all of these roads that we have in the township. There isn't an approach sign that says so many tons, but I have seen them in other places in the township. Should there be a sign there that says 18 ton or 20 ton or whatever?
There is so to answer the question, I would say yes. Good practice, best practice would be to post it. There are certain particularities of different structures. Some are through traffic. So those ones fall necessarily like into a weight limit bylaw that we have for structures.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to pull the bylaw or have a look whether or not that other structure was actually identified or not within the bridge bylaw or weight limit bylaw. But generally speaking, what it is that we need to have such a bylaw in place, and then the posting will take place. Because generally speaking, it's not only for our own use, but it's also for MTO use or for enforcement use or for OPP use. Because the bylaw being in place will assist the municipality.
We have this bridge study done based on one side being seasonal and the other side being not assumed. What happens if the whole road became seasonal? Would that change the necessity of the bridge engineering to meet certain standards? If we change the road use, does it change how does that affect your study?
Well, what happens right now is that the study is a little bit limited on the fact that we have this capacity study that limits it. The land use changes. Then, I mean, at the time as we speak, the weight limit basically is the red flag. It's the biggest constraint.
Okay.
So the study can be studied, but based on its actual current capacity, it's not going to change the analysis of the bridges.
Okay.
What it's gonna do is it's gonna indirectly flag that, there's limitation on that bridge. One of the challenge, once it's posted, one of the challenge will be that certain, I would say, trucking companies or provider of materials or delivering services, because they don't want to affect their own records. And they're kind of breaking the law if they cross a structure that's identified. It's their own risk, but they're willing to do so. So they may, on the flip side, decide not to proceed, right? So that's a bit of an issue. So the long-term use and the intent to do further development past the structure is something that would basically identify certain other needs to say, okay, what do we do? Because what is the required capacity? And then that would then trigger another type of review of the structure.
So if everything stays exactly as it is, we still have this expense to deal with within 2024, correct? That's $86,000.
Well, so what happens is it's like you do a safety on the vehicle, you identify what doesn't pass. So these issues don't pass. There's different ways to deal with them. Sometimes what happens is, you may, because it's a risk analysis. If you think of it that way, you're dealing with risk. So how do you mitigate risk? So sometimes one way to mitigate risk is to say, perhaps, it's a bit too expensive to do the purpose of that bridge doesn't necessarily warrant all this work. We understand it's been flagged, but maybe there's an alternative. An alternative could be to say, let's evaluate about a speed reduction posting. Because essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to mitigate the risk. So if some vehicle comes in and loses control, they will fall off the structure as it stands right now. But perhaps there's other alternatives as well. So it's a complicated question. I could try to explain it as clearly as possible, but it's a complicated question because the bridge identified the hazards and the issue and what doesn't meet today's code.
You have B6 flagged as well for $56,000 in that for, B6, which is the Crosses Bridge, for $63,000 on the front page. So that's work that we should be doing right away as well.
Well, not exactly, because years, this is identified in a sense that it's kind of a 2024. It refers to it as being a little later.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be right away. But it is identified as a future need under the asset management. One of the ways to go about it is to eventually address, one of the first points, which is basically to do a study, to start by saying, okay, we will carry on with some of the component to do a rehabilitation replacement study. Out of that study, you're going to receive some outcomes, options, alternatives. And then from that, ultimately, then it may kind of help guide a decision on out of all these alternatives. One of them will give me a 60-year life or a 30-year life. One of them will give me a 75-year life, but that's the cost variance between those options.
Right.
But once you have a study in place, then that's kind of become what will dictate those decisions that we'll take in the future afterwards. So it's identified that this one in particular, that there's a detailed deck. When I say detailed, it's to do the inspection of the deck itself. So when you go and you want to do a condition survey of that deck itself, and also it has the approach barrier and the end treatment as well that are identified. And again, when it does that, it identifies all four corners of the structure. We know that there's more risk on the incoming traffic than the leaving end. And again, so those are factors that, in this case, it's identifying all four. And that's where the cost is established. So that's kind of what it is. So there's a bit of a, overall comments on the structure that are provided during the OSIM report. So that's the summary of what
Great.
what we've done. The next study will be due in 2024, this was in 2022.
All right.
Antoine, in that chart, it shows the 63.0 in 2023.
Yes, and on the next page, it shows 68. I know that.
Not the, well, okay, thank you. But I'm just wondering, in 2023, is that kind of required spend this year?
So I stand pretty confident that, it's not an absolute must to spend what is established. Those are good guidelines to look at. Obviously, these are numbers that you would want to be discussing prior to budgets. It's kind of a little late to bring them up now, but essentially the idea is that we're trying to, I guess from a council perspective, it's more to be aware of what's at stake. It's more to understand that out of all the structures you've got, there's a bit of a replacement cost within the structure. If you were to replace every structures that you have, mind you don't have to, you'd be spending 7.5 million to do every structure you have. Good news is, that's not the case, but let's talk about, an average of, 130 some thousand dollars. And then, you know, that would be identified. So the way I would see it is, it red flags a little bit that, okay, there's some study, some evaluation to be done. The bridges are not necessarily in compliance when it comes to safety. And it's really just the approaches to the structure that's a hazard, because it doesn't have those self-attenuating barricades. But if you think of the different roads, you would maybe say, okay, there's one road that maybe is a bit more at risk because it's got traffic both sides, and then the other one is perhaps a little bit less at risk, as it's got its own specific category as being like a turnaround in advance of it. So you've got two different roads, two different settings. I would not lose any sleep over not doing the spending of that amount today. I think perhaps it's something that, you know, could be deliberated for discussions for
Antoine,
years kind of thing.
Antoine, I have a question. Bridge number 4, rehabilitation study, 5,000. Bridge number 6, rehab replacement study, 5,000, and a detailed deck condition survey, 15,000. Would you recommend that those surveys and studies be done in 2024?
I would recommend that, considering having them done or partially done or starting with one in 2024, moving on to another year, perhaps for the 2025, or considering both for 2024, they're both viable options.
Would you make a recommendation, which I don't think you've made a recommendation in your report, the summary, but would you make a recommendation on which is it Bridge 4, Bridge 6? Which one is a priority?
Well, I could come back with a recommendation as a, you know, to give, to prioritize which one as, you know, would be recommended to go first, as a quick follow-up report letter to council in a sense. Because right now, I believe I was actually coming with kind of the concept of presenting what we have, what was done, what those numbers mean, and just talk about the study itself. Not necessarily to do a specific recommendation on what to do next. But yes, it raised a good question that it may warrant to give a bit of information and direction as a recommendation of priority for future consideration.
Question?
So if we were planning, for instance, which is not the plan at all, but for instance, if we were planning larger development for Stewart's Road at the end, let's say, then that may be one that we want to go ahead with, but we're always talking about in its current use.
That's right.
So if there were another planned use for a particular bridge, that would change the timing and depending on what that planned use would be. So for example, if suddenly an unassumed road or a road that is seasonally maintained, someone is coming to us asking for maintenance, for a year-round maintenance agreement for that particular road, then would you suggest that the cost of those be borne by the taxpayer at large, or practice typically would say that that particular resident would be looking to bear the costs and not the larger municipality for the particular use that they're looking for one time? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's always complicated, but there is definitely, you know, factors to talk about and consider, because what happens is, like, you know, you've got something really particular on that road in itself. That, you know, it's got the question of how is it categorized, the classification of the road, the where it belongs, the what does it deserve or services. So there's an argument to be made in a sense that, you know, if you have costs, so the costs that we have right now are really geared towards the safety, the barricade. But if you're talking about changes to the scope and the use of that road where eventually you want to have through traffic going through it. And then in that sense, it's very clear that the structure itself is not capable of handling that traffic. So if you're gonna change the traffic, a 20-ton bridge will not be sufficient. So therefore, what it means is it will trigger another type of study where we're gonna go, and then a recommendation would be saying, okay, what are the soils? What are the bearing capacities? Can we investigate? Is there any bedrock nearby? Like, people may know that, yes, there is, but we need to do a little bit more thorough investigation. And also, what it also trigger is like, the alternatives of perhaps like reconstruction, rehabilitation of existing. Do we want to do 1 lane, 2 lane? So all these things would be triggered. Ultimately speaking, the cost, if I think of a developer as a developer, I would say that development, you know, would carry in those costs. So whoever would want to develop would have certain obligations to carry certain costs, unless there is a municipal need to also further develop in that area. Like, you know, if the municipality had lands that they want to also develop, perhaps there's a shared need. But if that's not the case, it's a little different.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Antoine. We appreciate the report, and if anybody has any extra time, you know, just a half an hour before bedtime, this report here is only
Yeah.
what 60 pages.
There's quite a-
Yeah, and we will post this because it is a public document, so we will post this after the meeting. In a few days.
Does anyone else have any other questions? No, no? All right. Well, thank you very much, Antoine. Very informative report. Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you. There.
Should we move that one up as well?
Yes, that would be good. Oh.
I don't want to inconvenience, so please don't move anything around if that's not saying.
We'll have you sit right there.
Is it my time? Is it my time to shine?
It's your time to shine.
Hi, thank you so much, first of all, for allowing me to come and speak to you guys tonight.
Let me just introduce you.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Formally on the agenda, this is item 7. This is a delegation. This is Tamara Silverstone looking to make a delegation about a road maintenance agreement.
Mhm.
Do I need to pass a motion to accept the delegation?
No.
No? Then the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So again, just thank you for allowing me to come here and speak tonight. It was kind of short notice for me. I was kind of caught off guard as far as what the process was, but I'm happy that Donna has shed a lot of insight as to what needs to happen in order for this to happen. So I just want to share a little bit of background info as to how I came here tonight. So I actually grew up camping in the area my whole life. My parents brought me here since I was about 10 years old. We'd go to Kiosk and Algonquin and even Great Deserts. And naturally I fell in love with it. And then when I met my husband, I brought him here obviously, and he fell in love with it too. And we started coming here to snowmobile and ice fish and summer camps whenever we could vacation. So once we started having a family, we knew that we really wanted to be here, specifically in Kelvin too. We actually looked at a lot of different properties, within just a few clicks. There's 2 trailers. There was actually one at the end of a road that we almost bought. And it wasn't until we found the property at 222 Latimer Lane that we just fell in love and we couldn't resist its charm and its beauty. So before pulling the trigger on buying that property, we actually did like a 60-day due diligence clause on the purchase of sale so that we could figure out and determine if it really was a residential lot and if we could potentially build our forever home here. So we spoke to multiple people during the course of between January and I'd say about June, like pretty recently. We spoke to multiple people and everyone basically kind of just assured us like, yeah, no problem. It's zoned a residential lot. So the only hiccup is that it's seasonally maintained. So you would just enter this thing called a road maintenance agreement. You show us your insurance slip and, you know, bada bing, bada boom, that's it. And I'm like, wow, talk about a small town. Like, this is so easy, right? Like, I've never seen anything so simple and so easy. Well, no, it's not that easy. It wasn't until I actually met with Shane and with Donna that I was informed of the reality of my circumstance. So, you know, during this time, and I spoke, I don't want to necessarily name the people I spoke to, but none of them are here, like no longer working with the township. But no one ever mentioned the words request, that this was a request that I had to do, that it had to come before a council, that the council actually had the power to deny and potentially, you know, not allow me to build on this land. Had that emphasis been laid, my decision to buy this property, it might have been very different and I might not have spent as much money or pulled the trigger to buy it as quickly as we did. Having said that, we are really grateful for it because it is amazing and we still really do want to be here. And we're pretty confident that one way or another we'll figure something out to make our dreams a reality. But right now the plan is to first, like this fall, we're actually in the process of building a shop. We've talked to Shane, the building inspector, about getting permits. So we're just waiting for an engineer to stamp out drawings for the shop to be built. Once that is done and approved, this winter, we're in the process of severing the lot into half. So we've already spoken to Joanne from the East Nipissing Planning Board about the severance, and we've gotten all the paperwork and documentation together for that. We just need to get a survey done. So that'll happen. Once we have those two equal lots, if all goes according to plan, we'll be selling that half to my father-in-law, and then me and my father-in-law will be building a house, two different houses on those lots. Follows the plan. So right now, Latimer Lane, I'm not sure if you guys know the road. It's not very long. It's just off Mount Pleasant, so it's pretty close. But it's 1.3 kilometers in length. Right now, there is one permanent residence currently on that road. And I'd say it's about, you know, a little under halfway down the road there. It's fully gravel the whole way, but it's only fully maintained all year round until so my first ideal request is that council approve an extension of that maintenance year round for the rest of the stretch of the road so that me and my father-in-law can build our houses down. Now, I totally get that that's an expense and I just heard a lot of really big numbers. So I'm not, you know, naive to the fact that that's something that we don't want to hear. But with two new houses, permanent residences, it'd be two new taxes and hopefully would help to offset some of those costs. Now, the other kind of portion of that, I totally understand that road where I'm asking for it to be maintained, it's not the same grade of road as the first part of it. I know that it's actually a little narrower and there's like grass sticking up. It's not the same amount of gravel. It might not even be the same type of gravel. If that road does need to be upgraded at all, and if that upgrade would be at my expense, I just financially, I cannot feasibly do that this year. That is not within my expense budget. So if that's the case, then I would be requesting to enter into a temporary road maintenance agreement where me and my husband would maintain that stretch of the road until we currently have a house in Bonfield that we're going to sell once we're able to build and move into it here in Calvin. So once we have access to more funds, then we would like to revisit that conversation and hopefully get that road up to snuff so that the municipality can take it over for us. We do have the equipment to do so. I don't know if you need the specs on it or anything, but we do have a really large tractor. We have a 7-foot snow plow with a snow blade on front. So it's a very capable machine. So yeah, basically just to summarize, I'm requesting all year access to that property starting this year, ideally, so that we can access our barn throughout the winter for storage. Either by an extension of the current maintenance that's happening, or B, a road maintenance agreement. And that's that.
All right, comments?
Well, in view of the condition of the road, I think it'd have to be a limited, because we could never get a fire truck down there. But when the house is built, we need to, as I just said about the weight of
For
the
sure,
stairs. We were just down there on a call for a lost man, and
Yeah, that was,
we had to go in with ATVs, and in the winter, we have to go in with snowmobiles, so if you had a house fire in there.
for sure. I totally understand that. I know where,
May I just interrupt? I
Oh, sorry.
think you're going a little bit too far down the road.
Yes.
Where she's talking, and I just drove it this morning,
Oh, good.
you drive down the road, there's a house on the left-hand side that's for sale. And then that's where the winter maintenance ends. And then you continue on down the road and you have a big gate. with
Yes,
no trespassing
correct.
sign. I can see that you spent a lot of money on putting the gravel into your road there. I mean,
Yes.
you've got crushed gravel going in, and that's where they're talking about going, not further down that muddy ATV trail with the 18-inch potholes in the water.
That's right. Yeah, it turns into essentially an ATV trail.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
yeah, because
So,
And it's
What
just maybe on
happens-
Thursday night, we could take a drive down there with one of the trucks.
yeah, and see, but essentially what happens is for the township to maintain that property, my understanding is that it has to be brought up to municipal standards first.
which I can totally understand.
And that's going to be relatively expensive.
Mhm.
And it would never be offset by taxation revenue. I mean, maybe in 100 years or. But I'm sure that what you were told by other people who are no longer here is that you can enter into a road agreement.
Yes.
Which would mean that you must maintain the road properly yourselves, and it still stays as a seasonally accessed road.
Right,
But you would maintain the road. Now, when you're maintaining the road, anybody can drive down it because it's a public road.
yes, for sure.
So you can't stop people from driving down that road. So the road has to be maintained properly and you have to have liability insurance.
Yes,
And what that liability insurance says is that should someone drive down that road and slide off into the bush because it was improperly maintained, your insurance is going to cover that cost.
yeah,
If at some point over the next 5 years, and if it would be another council, they decided that they wanted to assume the road, you would have to have brought it up to municipal standards,
right.
which means 10 meters wide, 20 meters in total with the two shoulders. And you were talking about that, the initial port was wider
of course.
and it narrows down to, so it would have to be brought, up to municipal standards.
Right,
And that would be at the homeowner's expense.
which
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
But I mean, you could enter into a road agreement, that would be up to the CAO to research.
Mhm.
As long as insurance was taken care of
Yeah.
and you met the requirements.
Mhm.
Yes, Councilor Grant.
I was just wondering if someone could, a member of staff could, in advance of any future discussions, send me those minimum road standards. I've been trying to locate those standards for many years and no one has ever given me a copy. So I think it would be super helpful to actually have them in hand with what specifically our roads are required to be. And it's just something I'm interested in receiving.
Absolutely.
I did just want to note too, that I have spoken to my insurance agency and they are well aware of what we could possibly be entering into. And they've totally okayed it and they've agreed to the $5 million liability coverage. I haven't pulled the trigger on that yet, obviously, because if I don't need it, I'm not gonna get it, but it is kind of set up so that if it is approved, then we're ready to go in that kind of aspect.
And if I might, the reason that you spoke with Shane is to build a house to get a building permit. So on the road, the way it is today, they can build a camp or nothing, or a shop. But
Yeah,
they can't build a home without year-round access to the road. And in this case, a road agreement, or as you said, extending the year-round maintenance. So that is what's holding the building of a house up, is a road agreement. And as Tamara said, road agreement means house. No
Yes.
road agreement means they move.
yeah, we're set up some sort of camp, yeah.
Suggesting that we're probably in agreement with a road agreement, it's just matter what kind at this
And
point.
and that's what we work at in the background to bring back a recommendation.
So staff would work on a road agreement, which they would get approved through legal and, yeah.
We had need that motion.
So we do have a motion in front of us.
So should we move forward? Any other questions? Any other comments?
How
I have a
far down,
comment. Sorry, go ahead, John.
just wondering how far down the road, like are we talking a couple kilometers or?
No, it's about 750 meters. So I do actually have a printout from Google Maps. If you do want to see it, I think it's, or, oh my gosh, save it as fast.
Everybody can probably look at it anyway.
But yeah, it's not a very long stretch, but from the current permanent residence to where I am, it's about 750 meters, but that's a guess.
I do have a question. You said you're working on a severance through the East Nipissing Planning Board.
Yes,
So for two properties, which way would the two properties go? From on either side of that driveway or?
sorry, so there was two actual driveways currently that were already on that place. So the one was actually a driveway to a camp trailer that they had. That was that's kind of the first driveway you see when you're on that rockety stretch. The second part was actually Old Logging Road, and that's where we've been putting the gravel, our driveway.
Yes.
So that's kind of where the property line is. It's 200 acres, so that property line where the second driveway is, that would be the beginning of the second 100-acre lot.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I drove down there today and I thought you were trying to get a road agreement for the road from where your gate is further down.
Oh, gosh.
And I had to abandon my shoes with clay and.
Yeah, no, yeah, we're not, I mean, we might be a little dumb, but we're not that dumb. Yeah.
All
So
right, so,
I do have a comment, Richard. I think this raises a bigger question. On one hand, we want development in the township. And this highlights an issue that we're going to face ongoing, I think, if we have more development. So I'm not sure if we have a policy or what the policy is. But I think we need to develop one if we don't have a policy. A road agreement and maintaining a road like that is a huge expense for the homeowner. Grant money available for opening up roads that have been closed past. That was a maintained road, but a number of them were closed perhaps 10 or 15 years ago or 20 years ago. Something to consider for the future.
absolutely.
I think the key thing for me, my biggest kind of hurdle was just the lack of information that I was given. I think that was kind of the frustrating part was I was obviously very naive when I just took people's words for what they were. But yeah, just the lack of like concrete information. I mean, we were actually emailed a road maintenance agreement and like asked for insurance for this stretch of road. So we really didn't realize the magnitude of what actually needed to happen. And I think in the future, yeah, like when people are coming and they do want to buy lots and they do want to develop it, just making sure that they actually have all the information needed.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I know you were talking about updating the website and stuff, and I think even having things like that on there for quick information access would be really helpful, for sure.
Excellent. So, if there are no, Councilor Grant?
One final comment. Yeah, I just, it's definitely it is a confusing topic. I mean, I've been doing research in this area for probably 5 or 6 years, and I still don't have answers to some of my questions on, specifically the exact thing that you're presenting, here today. So I think that it's an opportunity for us to clear up some confusion around the topic and, find out, moving forward, how we're going to handle these situations. Thank you.
Last
All right.
question, did you have a good lawyer?
I did, but I was all doe-eyed when I saw this property, and I feel like she really did advise me to get some more things in writing, and I was like, no, you don't understand, you don't understand, they just do things differently there. Well, no.
Well, we do.
Yeah, a little, for sure, but at the end of the day, it's.
We're all from Southern Ontario. This is.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, just ask somebody walking by on the road what they think. They'll, hopefully they'll give you some good advice, maybe not.
All right, so we'll move on to a resolution here. And I'll need a mover and a seconder, but I'll read the resolution first. Now therefore be it resolved that the council for the court of the municipality of Calvin hereby authorizes the CAO to consider council's comments at this meeting and bring forth a recommendation regarding to Mayor Silverstone's request for a road maintenance agreement back to council on or before October the 1st. So I need a mover and a seconder for that motion. Okay, Councilor Manson and Councilor Morton. Any last comments?
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I call that to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I hope it's not rude, but I do have a young boy at home that needs. To bed. Thank you again.
Thanks for coming.
All right, if we can move on into the we're jumping back to item 5 on the agenda, which is the approval of the previous meeting minutes dated June 27th, July 11th, July 20th, and August the 15th. I need a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes. Councilor Morton, and seconded by
Councilor Latimer.
Councilor Latimer. All right. Any comments or questions on the previous minutes?
It's 15.
All right, no comments?
It says 15, but I only have up to the 20th.
Goes there.
All right, that motion is now carried.
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
Under 5, approval of the agenda, we had one item to add as 9.3.9.4, and it was meeting time.
Okay, yes, we did. That was it. Yes, so we're just adding that to the agenda.
9.3.
Meeting time.
All right, so now on to the budget. If we could, item 6, the 2023 budget. The first is a bylaw to set the tax ratios. That's 6.1.1 bylaw 2023-034. Need a mover and a seconder, please. Councilor Manson, and seconded by
I'll second.
Dean Grant. This is to set the tax ratios, and you have those in front of you. Is there any discussion on the tax ratios? First, we had the open meeting prior to this, so we had lots of discussion there, but anything else? No? All right, all in favor of setting the tax ratios? And
Aye.
that is carried. Next is bylaw 6.1.2, bylaw to adopt the tax ratios. So this is bylaw 2023-035. And mover and a seconder, please.
I'll move it.
All right, Councilor Latimer is moving it, seconded by Councilor Morton.
So this is the tax rates. Maybe if we could read the motion.
All right, bylaw 2023.035 being a bylaw to adopt the 2023 estimates and strike rate for 2023 be read, enacted, and passed this 22nd day of August 2023. Discussion? None? All in favor?
Aye.
And that. The next item on the agenda is August 15th, the truck tender. This is item 6.2. So 6.2.1, the results of the work tandem truck tender, and this is a report by our CAO, Donna Maitland.
So truck tenders are due in next Monday, and because we don't have the council meeting set until September the 5th, we need to decide about awarding that tender. So the suggestion in the motion, if I could have a mover and a seconder before I read it out loud.
Mover and a seconder.
6.2.1. That a special meeting of council be held on Monday, August 28th at noon in council chambers to receive and review the tandem truck request for tenders received and award the tender. It will be a 15-minute, half-hour meeting that can participate on Zoom for that and only that specific purpose. So Brandon, the acting superintendent, and I will be here to open. We just need council to review those and to decide on awarding the tender.
Is there any questions or comments?
Do you need quorum to hold
We
that
need-
meeting?
So this will be a short meeting at noon. It's just,
Available.
and
I'm available.
I'm available.
You know,
I'm not sure if that's so.
Yeah, it'll like, Good, bye.
Available electronically.
all right. So we
I am
have
not.
enough. All right, but even without Council Latimer, we would still have quorum. So this is the next item on the agenda. John read it out. A special meeting of council be held on Monday, August the 28th, 2023 at noon in council chambers to receive and review the tandem truck requests for tenders received and to award the tender. And as we said, that'll be Monday at noon. All those in favor? All right, Carrie.
Typically it wouldn't happen this way, but we know because the truck's been pulled, we need to move forward on this. Sooner than later.
Did we get a mover and a seconder on that? So. okay.
Oh, can we get a seconder? Is Councilor Morton? And
Oh, okay.
Councilor. So the next item is the investigation of funding for the Public Works tandem truck by Leanne Crozier. Finally, sorry we kept you waiting so long, Leanne, but we're back to this. You're giving us a report about what possibilities we have for funding the tandem truck.
Actually, Mayor Gould, I'm sorry, I haven't had sufficient time to hear back from the people I've reached out to in just this short notice regarding amounts. I'll see if I should have something, if that could be added to the special meeting on Monday. Just a report, no input.
Okay, yeah, that could be added to the meeting. We're going to be opening the tenders then anyway, so that makes sense.
Nothing
So
will
then
be able
we-
to be finalized until such time as the tender is awarded and the actual amount is determined.
Fair enough.
It's part of the question.
And it really is just a report on the standing of your investigation at that point anyway.
All right, so we don't need to vote on that resolution.
That's just for.
Deferral.
Deferral until the next meeting. And we have the consent agenda. So I just need a mover and seconder to accept the consent agenda as presented. All right, Councilor Morton and Councilor Manson. So we have the consent agenda in and there are two items that are in here for the public to read. Does anything need to be moved forward for discussion?
Well, I'm on the police service board and, this a recommendation for a change in structures, probably gonna happen next year. But today, the secretary of the current board resigned, so there's gonna be, I'm gonna be recommending that it come to council of all the four communities for their next council meeting to determine, a direction. It has to be secretary somewhere.
And you're a member of that board.
I'm the chairman right now.
Oh, you're the chairman right now. So can you,
Chairman of nobody.
the chairman of nobody?
Well, there's another, two board members, that's Pat Large from Papineau and a councilor from Mattawa. But historically, it's always been the secretary from, Mattawa, who is the clerk, and she's resigned, and there's nobody in office that will take over.
Which is a mandated board, of course.
Well, yeah, and then we're gonna have to ask Papineau or Calvin or Matawan to provide that service.
So this consent agenda item is actually not up to date because of.
No, that's a whole
This is a
different
change.
scenario. He's adding a new
Yeah,
item
that's
to
gonna,
the agenda as he
Right.
speaks.
So can we bring this forward to the next regular council meeting?
that's what we're gonna discuss, but it'll be an agenda item next month
All right,
or next.
let's bring it forward to the next, meeting. So we have, we've jumped around so much.
We just need a motion to accept the consent.
Oh, yes, the motion to accept the consent agenda. We have a mover and a seconder, correct? Could I get a roll on accepting the consent agenda? So that motion is carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda would be 9.2, which is a treasury report, year to date. Oh, we've lost Leanne.
Oh, no, no, stop. Okay, sorry.
Are you still here? Oh,
I mute myself and shut off my video because it comes in better and then I get all messed up on doing it. Good
All
news
right.
is I've actually this week heard from the auditor, so the 2022 audit is moving forward as we speak. And going forward, we'll hopefully get that finalized so that we can get this reporting to council, get the budget moving forward, get tax bills out, and start looking at where we are to date and budgeting for 2024.
all right.
That's good.
All right. Thank you, Leanne. Appreciate that. I missed one item, which is 9.1.2, the Integrity Commissioner contract for services. And our contract has ended, so what do you?
You still need to do the motion for the bridge, the 9.11. And then 9.13.
Well, we did the 9.11, we did that. That was Anton Boucher who was here. We moved him up.
We didn't move
Correct,
to
but you
accept the
didn't
report.
do the-
Oh, we didn't move to accept the report? All right, so 9.11 is the bridge management study, which we have heard. So I need a mover and a seconder to accept that report. So a mover, please.
I'll move it.
And still seconded. So Councillor Morton seconds. All those in favor of accepting the bridge management study report? All right, that motion is carried. So we're moving on to 9.1.2, which is the Integrity Commissioner contract for services. That ended, so they expired September the 1st, so we have to renew that contract. I just need a mover and a seconder for this extension, please. Councillor Manson and seconded by Councillor Morton. So we're bringing forth a resolution to appoint Guy Giorno as of Fatno Dumoulin law firm and IC for an interim period of 6 months.
Right now is 6 months.
Okay.
Expires.
Okay, so and approved to be extended for 1 year from September the 1st, 2023 to September 21st. September the 1st, 2024. Any comments or discussion?
It's sort of related to the integrity commissioner contract, but indirectly. And we had discussions earlier, a few months ago, about adding a front end to our code of conduct, and that, we're
That
going to
has-
have a fee, and it's kind of fallen off the. Seems to me it's fallen off the grid.
Actually, no, that was passed in council as a bylaw and that has been added.
So we've
The fee-
amended the code of conduct.
Well, we added the fee, but if you remember, there is a committee that was to be formed and that would rewrite the code of conduct, and that committee has not yet finished its meetings. If I remember, it was who? Those, yeah, it was Councillor Manson, Councillor Latimer, and Councillor Grant who were on that committee.
Right.
We'll have to schedule another meeting with that committee to finalize the code of conduct.
Correct. The second meeting was to be in August, but of course that's been delayed. So, okay. Just wanted to bring it up.
Any other comments or?
Yeah,
Yes.
just want to follow up Councillor Latimer's comment. So yes, I'm aware that we passed that by bylaw in council, but was the code of conduct, was it added to the code of conduct? Because I think if it wasn't, we would want to make sure that even though we've passed that, make sure that that is added. I haven't had time to check that, but I think that's just the question.
No, we haven't. We haven't added it. We were to meet in August, but circumstances changed and the meeting didn't happen. So it's future date.
All right. Are you?
Add it to the priority list, yes.
Mhm.
I'm aware, thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
The only question is about the term. We're only going 1 year, or did we want to go for 2 or 3 or?
Well, I mean, let's go with one and we can extend for another 3 years the next time. We might find a little bit of resistance from Guy Giorno about the 1 year. He may want to go for a longer term as well.
If I can speak to that, he is expecting a 3-year.
Yeah, I'd suggest a 3-year. Take it right through our term and then they can do it. I don't care.
And it typically is beyond, from his recommendation was that it go beyond for 1 year later, so that a new council isn't struck with having to deal with an integrity commissioner at the very beginning of their terms. They go 1 year beyond.
And a lot of times they're asking for 5-year contracts, so like 4 years.
Well, that's the discussion on the motion on the floor. So you're suggesting, Councillor Morton, that it not be 1 year, that it be 3 years?
Before, if the recommendation or suggestion is to go 1 year beyond the term of this council, it should go to 2027 because there's an election in 2026.
So it seems like we haven't had much to do with him, and so do we know if we're satisfied with his performance? Is there any question about it? Is, if it's good, then we go for a longer term.
About this at 1 year, and then at that point you could extend for another 3 at the end of the 1 year. That would take you into 2025. Councillor Grant.
I mean, I agree with Councillor Morton, except I feel like it's only proper to have some sort of performance review, to just have a discussion and then move forward. It just seems like it's a very short period of opportunity to think about this, to just go 4 years right this second. I don't know. I don't like to delay things. I could probably get behind it, but it just seems to me like it'd be worth a short discussion on a sort of a performance review and then move into a longer contract. So, I mean, I support the 1 year myself.
If I might.
Yeah.
So this particular contract expires before your next council meeting.
Exactly.
While it has not been brought to the table before now, that's the unfortunate thing. Recognizing that it does expire in September, it's why it's here today, because it hasn't been brought to you to this point. And speaking of bringing speakers forward, Mr. Giorno has also agreed when I talked to him about having public information sessions about various services and programs that we offer. The Integrity Commissioner is one of those that we could bring before a regular council of meetings so he can speak and introduce himself to the public and about the role and how Integrity Commissioners come. I don't think we want more business to evaluate his performance. I think it's a great thing that we don't have a lot of business to give him. We are on tape, right? So you're not asking for more people to come forward with Integrity Commissioner requests, please.
Could we ask him to renew for 1 year with the intent that we're going to have an opportunity to have further discussion with possibly extending it, you know,
Another 3.
before the end of the 1 year, like in several months or 6 months, we would reconsider. Would he go for that? It's
So
I
I
guess
would
no news is good news, but
suggest that the cancellation clause, the out clause, would take care of that based on performance, that at any period of time with X number of days notice, based on performance, that this contract could be null and void.
All right.
Another way to look at
So
it.
are you
So a couple of
suggesting to go
things.
to 3 years instead of 1?
I am thinking that if in the business that he's in, busy as he is, all Integrity Commissioners are, if I was presented with a 1-year contract, then you might look at it in 6 months, and I had 4 other people behind me looking for my services, that I would likely tell you that I don't have time to play back and forth every 6. I'm just personally take you out of any contract. For a decision, but I just know it's not
Yeah.
typical to use.
But when the Councillor Grant and I were on the original committee that brought him into the picture. And when we set the 6 months, the expectation was that he was gonna negotiate with the current CAO to become a longer term. And we gave him, everybody thought 6 months was more than enough time for him to enter into an agreement for a multi-year package. Unfortunately, circumstances that a lot of Councillor Latimer mentions have changed, and I agree with our CAO that if we go with 1 year, he's liable to just say, I get too much on my plate.
And we're looking at a special meeting then in order to not name an Integrity Commissioner before this term expires. That's the danger that we go into with the 1 year.
All right. So Dr. Morton, our CAO, is suggesting 3 years. Anybody else? 1 or 3?
I'm fine with the notion of the longer term with, as you said, the escape clause, that really takes care of any issues. If it's not working out, then we can belong that way.
Councilor Grant has-
Councilor Grant?
Yeah, I just think that maybe some of us, definitely myself, are just a bit nervous on the topic, just due to past relationships that we've had with other integrity commissioners. But I do think we have a reasonable, a reasonable cancellation clause that we did sign, and it's just the same contract moving forward. I mean, I think it provides some stability, and we don't got to keep revisiting it. And maybe our committee can get back to work on our code of conduct, and because that is our code, and I'm sure he'll work with us on that as well. So I would support longer term.
So let me bring this to a vote before council. I've changed the resolution to read, now therefore be it resolved that the appointment of D. Giorno of Baskin Martin Dumoulin LLP as the IC for an interim period of 6 months as approved in bylaw 2023-06 be extended for a 3-year period from September the 1st, 2023 to 2026, correct? Yes. And also that we revisit the Code of Conduct Committee, which was duly set up and set up in a meeting as well.
And he should be a part of that
Yes.
committee.
All right. So all in favor? All right. That motion is carried as amended. So we've done the treasury report. The next thing on the agenda is item 9.3, local planning board application 2023.01. It's a recirculation of the Metersma and Misagi severance package. It's in your agenda. Essentially, this is before the planning board, and it's just up to council to say if they have any comments about that severance. Just need a. Oh, thank you. So this is be it resolved that the Council of Municipality of the Corporation of Calvin have received a copy of the East Nipissing Planning Board's correspondence concerning application 2023-02, which is a recirculation of the Metersma and Misagi severance. Is there any comments or questions about this severance? Is everyone in agreement with it moving forward? Does anyone have any comments that they wish to add? No.
I just want to say the work of the severance and the application rests with the East Nipissing Planning Board. So you're at this point receiving it. And if there is anything that you want to bring to their attention as they review this application, now is the time. It's been published on our website. The meeting was on August 16th. But now they've extended, East Planning has extended their meeting, delayed it until tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, yeah.
Tomorrow night.
So we've just had,
So-
it's been out there.
This is something we discussed 6 months ago, I think, or 4 months ago, right?
Oh,
I
that
think
one has been approved, the one that we discussed before. This is a recirculation. They've changed the severance to be a larger severance in the middle of the property because there were some issues with the way the lot was entered. So this is a recirculation, so it's an amendment to the original severance. Originally, it was a small lot at the south end of the lot. Now it's a larger lot in the middle of the acreage. So if there is no comments, that I'll call this to a vote. Did I ask for a mover and a seconder? No. I need a mover and a seconder to accept this. So that's Councillor Morton and seconded by Councillor Manson. Thank you. So now therefore be it resolved, the Council of the Municipality of the Corporation of Calvin received a copy of the East Nipissing Planning Board's correspondence concerning application 2023-02, a recirculation of this severance, and further that council awaits the results of the planning board's August 22nd postponed from the 16th meeting to provide comment on the application. All those in favor? All right, that motion is carried. Yes.
Sorry. 9.2, the treasury report. I don't. I'm very second.
That was the report that
She didn't provide.
she did provide. She told us that the budget is sorry, the year end is under process, et cetera. So you don't have a mover and a seconder for that. Just for the Leanne's report about the budget, I just need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Manson, Councillor Morrison. And we will accept Leanne's report.
Yeah.
All in favor? There.
Planning board meeting, didn't you say it was tomorrow night?
Yes,
This is tomorrow, plus tomorrow,
23rd.
23rd.
yes.
Your report says 22nd.
Well, no, it is the 23rd.
Could be.
I'll be there.
Yes, I know. I won't.
All right, so at that, we
9.4 meeting time. Do you want to?
Oh, yes, we added that to the agenda, 9.4. This is just to discuss the meeting time of the regularly scheduled Calvin meetings. This is new to the agenda.
Okay.
And I just added this.
And we just added this to the agenda earlier on, under the approval to the agenda. So I need a mover and a second to discuss the timing of the regularly scheduled meetings. And we'll discuss it. So Councillor Manson and seconded by Councillor Grant. It has been suggested, personally by the CAO, that and this is just up for this point in time, that the meetings be, instead of at 7 o'clock on the first and third Tuesday of every month, be at 6 o'clock on the first Tuesday and Thursday of every month.
So we change the day.
Or second Tuesday, yes, but at 6 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock. And the reason for this suggestion is that to get more guest speakers to come in, often it's hard to get people to come in at 7, 8 o'clock at night. We had Antoine in today. We want to have our integrity commissioner and some other people in. So this is just up for discussion. I know that I'm an aging politician, and when we get to 10 o'clock at night, it's hard. So if we started our meetings at 6, we might be done a little bit earlier as well, but the main reason is that it's easier for a lot of guests and so on to have an early meeting. So please, comments.
Good idea.
Yeah,
I'm retired, but I'm worried about the public's reaction to making it 6 o'clock, and then we don't get a lot of people coming anyway. And then they'll use that as an excuse, well, I couldn't get there because it's now at 6 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock.
okay, so you're saying you,
I'm saying, I don't care what the time is. You can make it 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm already meeting 2 places at 4 o'clock in the afternoon somewhere else. So, doesn't matter to me, but I mean, as far as the public, if we want them to come here, if maybe we should put it up to the public and ask them for input.
The main reason, honestly, I'm discussing is 6 PM is because I do see your faces around this table. I am not looking at the audience to see how tired they are by 10 PM. I am looking at my council members and knowing that you're all falling by 10 PM. And the bylaw right now, the procedural bylaw, which we also have to review, does say that you're here until 11 at latest. So by moving it 1 hour ahead, you're more awake and lively and able to think after a full day of whatever you're doing at 6 PM. And we're ending earlier by at least 1 hour, because if we were to follow procedural bylaw, we can be here until 11 PM. And we have been here until after 10 and before me, and I heard last council met a lot of times till late at night. And so mostly it is for your mental health. I drive, and it doesn't matter for me if it's midnight or 1 AM, but I don't think you want to be here lively with me as much as I can be at 10 AM. I've seen it on your faces. So the main reason really is about council and whether or not you feel you can continue to participate at that late hour. Given the complexity and the nature of all of the issues that we are facing, they do take brain power and a lot of it.
I'd
Councillor
like to
Grant?
speak to, oh, sorry,
Right,
Councillor Morton, perhaps the reason people don't come out is because it doesn't start at 6 and they can't stay up that late to attend the meetings. I'm in favor of it. I'm in favor of an earlier start for exactly what, as Donna stated.
Councillor Grant?
Yeah, there's a number of reasons I think that could make sense. I can make it from work, so that's a good thing, I hope. And you know, when you get past 10 o'clock, it's just not, to me, it's not realistic to be making, you know, very good decisions. It's hard, right? And so, you know, earlier start, earlier finish. And I also think we're doing lots of things like live streaming and recording and such for public participation as well. And guest speakers as well would be more likely to come, as well as staff. It's not so late for staff to drive home at night in the middle of winter as well. So I think it makes sense.
All right, then call this to a vote. We don't have a resolution. I'll ask the CEO to put a number on that resolution, but it being a resolution that council change its regularly scheduled meetings. Teresa, that's the second Tuesday and the fourth Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m.
So if I make the wording that I put together was that the procedural bylaw be amended to reflect the start time of regular meetings to 6 p.m. and no later than 10 p.m. Because we do need to amend the procedural bylaw, even though right now it's a temporary one that we've been suspending, we need to amend that bylaw
Right.
at this point if we're changing the time. As Councillor Grant, you were suggesting last time that other bylaw hadn't been amended to reflect the change somewhere else. We need to follow it through to this
Right.
point. Yeah.
All right. All
Yeah.
those. Well, listen, it's not 10 o'clock yet, people, but we are now moving to a closed session, so.
Because we started at 6.
So I need a mover and a seconder to move to a closed section. Let me just find that. Closure. Council for the Corporation of the Municipality of Calvin hereby move into a closed session at 8:31. I need a mover and a seconder.
I'll
Mover. Okay, I'm confused. You moved, Councilor Mattson and Councilor Grant. Everyone for attending. We really appreciate your attentiveness and what's the 5 o'clock?
Means that beauty home and see Jeopardy now.
I need we moved and seconded it. All those in favor of moving into the closed section? And that is carried.